you again to all of our sponsors, those who were very instrumental in having us present to you all. And welcome, Oxon Hill. We are so appreciative of you taking the time to share with us your energy, your expertise in terms of just participating. We appreciate the time that you're taking with us today. All right, so our first presentation today will be on excuse me, will be just a quick overview of the test, the SAT test, as well as the math section. We're going to take you through that so that we can quiz you in the end. That's actually what we would like to do, to see you all put these strategies that we're going to go over into action, because they are definitely useful and test proven. Okay, so understanding the test we're talking about is the SAT test. Even though this is SAT, you can use this information for PSAT, ACT, as well as other AP exams if you all have them in high school. So these test strategies that will be given today will definitely help you along the way. The SAT comprised of 5 different sections that are given on the SAT, and they come succinctly. So the first one is reading, where you have 52 questions that are given in 65 minutes. Writing and language, 44 questions in 35 minutes. Math with no calculator, you get 20 questions, 5 of which are actually grid-ins, where you have no multiple choice to rely upon for those 5 questions at the end of the 20 question section, but you get 25 minutes to complete that one. Math with calculator is 38 questions, of which 8 of them are those grid-in questions at the end, where you actually have to put in your own answer. You won't have multiple choice to rely upon, and you get 55 minutes to do that. For those of you who are taking the essay, I definitely plead to you now to make sure that the schools that you want to apply to are accepting of the essay. It's not that you can show up on any Saturday that the test is being offered at 12:15 and say, hey, I'm taking the essay, can I come in and take it? No, they won't allow you to do that. You have to sit through the entire exam. So please make sure that you don't do that. I'll just go to collegeboard.org and make sure that the school that you want to go to actually wants that exam, okay? Some recommend it and some don't. All right, so our first section, well, the first section today that we'll be handling is math, which is actually the 3rd section of the test that's given. And you'll see that the topics that are covered are algebra, advanced math, and geometry. Notice how geometry doesn't have that many questions covered in this section, and math with calculator, the larger one, actually has algebra, problem solving, and data analysis, advanced math, and geometry. When they say advanced math, they're referring to algebra 2. So if you have not taken that yet, you may just want to snatch up a few algebra 2 questions on Khan Academy to see, you know, what they look like, okay? And we'll actually have a few that you can do. But the good thing is, any of the strategies that I teach you, you can use for those questions, okay? All right, what's a good score? Some folks ask me this all the time. So a good score is actually the one that gets you into the school that you want to get into, okay? So that's actually what a good score is. You want to put yourself somewhere within the middle, 50th percentile of those schools, of those scores that the schools have accepted. So it's not that the schools will only accept the scores, right? So for instance, if you wanted to get into Howard University, for instance, here you have Howard University. They have their score range is 1,090 up to 1,300. Okay, So 1,090 is what the 25th percentile of those freshmen that came in, that's the scores that they had. And the 1,300 is the score that for the 75th percentile. Okay, so these are not the lowest, okay, and the highest. These are actually the middle 50th percentile, okay? So the 25th to the 75th percentile. So it's important that you know that, because a lot of people think, oh, well, I don't have that score. But it's okay. 25% of their freshman class got in with scores lower than 1090, and 25% of their freshman class got in with scores higher than 1,300. So whenever you see these scores, remember that is what they are looking at, okay? So you want to fall somewhere in between. All right. Is your school test optional? Some people don't know that. And now due to COVID, we know that a lot of schools jump into test optional. But don't think, oh, this is great. I don't have to take send my scores in. Yes, that may be the case, but always read the fine print. Whenever they say test optional, you want to know whether you have to come in for an interview. You may have to have a certain GPA to get into that school. You also may have to send in a graded paper from an English teacher. There could be a whole number of different things that you may have to do. So just make sure that you know what those test optional guidelines are for your school. Okay, how should you prepare for the test? That is that's a pretty good question. How should you prepare? Most students would start their junior year knowing that they have to take it in March or June or May, okay? But I advise that if you are a freshman viewing this today, this workshop, be happy, because those students who start earlier actually get to see the test a lot more. They get to see what's on the test, and they get to practice a lot more than those who start a little later. So always start early if you can. Okay. Tests require savvy. Okay. So for these, like for instance, if you got a question like this and they said find X, this particular student found X, right? X is right there. It's right there on the sheet, but that's not what they meant by finding X, right? They actually wanted to see what X was, so you have to actually calculate that. And this is a 3, 4, 5 triangle for those of you who may not know or remember that. Okay. All right. A question like this: give a brief explanation of the meaning of the term hard water. Okay, if I saw water and it was hard, that would be ice to me, right? Okay, but of course, this question is not, that answer is not what they want for this particular question. This question is asking for a little more in-depth information. Okay, all right. How do you calculate the raw score? Now, on the test, the raw score is actually what you get from the questions that you get right, okay? So if you get a question correct, that's 1 point for you, all right? 1 point. Then if you get a question wrong, that's gonna be 0 points. Goose egg, for those of you who use that term, you get nothing for anything that you get wrong. And if you skip, you get 0. Okay, so this is why we use what we call the now, later, never technique. All right, now, later, never. The first thing you want to think about is, let's just pretend we're on the math section. We have a total of 38 questions, and we have 55 minutes to achieve as many questions correct as we can. The first thing you're going to do is do the ones that are easiest for you. Always knock out the now questions. Now questions are easy because you've seen them before. Let's say you're in geometry class or you're a whiz at algebra. You will go right into the test as though you're doing a scavenger hunt and do the ones that are easiest for you. No one said you had to start from 1 to 38. You can actually skip around as much as you can during that section. You just can't go to the other section. All right. The second set of questions you want to do are called later questions. Later questions are the ones that you skip when you're finding the easies, right? But you go back to these and you use a strategy, whether it's process of elimination, it could be picking numbers, or like the strategy I'll show you today in terms of plugging in. Okay, the third thing that you want to do after you've done all of the easy questions and you've knocked out all of the later questions with those awesome strategies that you'll be equipped with, you are going to knock out the never questions. The never questions are the ones that you use a letter of the day, LOTD. That's going to be any letter that you want to choose, A, B, C, or D. Okay, some students like B and C. They like to stay in the middle. You're going to take your pencil, and when that proctor of the exam tells you that you have 5 minutes remaining, you're going to take your pencil and bubble in all of those blank spaces with a letter of the day. Okay, so this is a demo of what that could possibly look like. Okay, so we have our rabbit. Our rabbit is going to take all 58 questions. That's the 20 in the non-calc and the 38 in the calculated section, which make 58. We're going to put those together, and they run through all of them. I mean, they try to do all of them, which I wouldn't recommend. Okay, so make sure that you don't do that like this rabbit. So when they did that, they got 32 of them right and 26 incorrect. Okay, their raw score is 32, and that's what they have, and that is generally equivalent to a 550 on the SAT. Now, let's say you are a tortoise or turtle, as some people call them. You attempt 46 of them. So out of the 58, you attempt 46 because you know you don't have to do all of them. Okay, and out of the 46, you actually get 38 of them right. Okay, but when the proctor said you have 5 minutes left, that turtle actually completed the last 12. They used their letter of the day and they filled in 12. Now, they had 12 questions left. They filled in their letter of the day, and they, out of the 12, they got 3. 3 of them were right, okay? And they bumped their score up from a 600 with the 46 that they got to a 630. That's a pretty big jump. So the rabbit, being quick and fast, did all of them and only got a 32 out of 58. The tortoise, okay, moving slow and steady, knew that they could skip a lot more questions. They actually did 46 of them, skipped 12, but then they went back and got 3 of those 12 right by just simply plugging in a letter. Okay, so this strategy is very, very important. They did the nouns, they went back and did the laters, and then with the nevers, they actually plugged in a letter of the day and got a higher score than that fast rabbit. Okay. The math section. As we said before, it consists of arithmetic, algebra 1 and 2, geometry, and then there's data analysis and statistics as well, okay? So you may have problem solving questions as well as grid-ins, and grid-ins, we will show you what those look like, but you may be familiar if you've taken the PSAT already. So here is a strategy called picking numbers. All right, our first strategy of the day was now, later, never. That's the order in which you should do the math questions. This is a strategy called picking numbers. It's also called substitution, okay? So Michael is twice as old as Janet is, and half as old as Tito is. We're talking about the Jackson 5. Okay. If Janet is J years old, how old is Tito in terms of J? And they'll always say in terms of that, in terms of J, all you have to do is take your pencil and scratch through. Okay, scratch through in terms of J. What they really want to know is how old is Tito, right? That's all they want to know. But notice how they gave you answer choices that had variables in them. So this is pick a number strategy. If you're on the test and you see answer choices that have variables in them, I want you to pick numbers for those variables, okay? So now that they told us who's older than who and who is half of whose age, we're actually going to use that information and pick numbers for our different letters, okay? For Michael, Janet, and Tito. But there are rules to this game. You can't just go in and pick like 100 for Janet, okay? Like, of course, Janet is like in her 50s now, but you can't do that. I wouldn't recommend that. So there are rules to this. The first rule is pick easy numbers. If you're on the non-calculated section, wouldn't it be best for you to pick small numbers? I think so. Okay, so we're going to pick small numbers. My rule of thumb is never go bigger than 10. So you can start with 2 or 3 or 10, and you never want to use 100 unless you're using percentages or fractions. Okay, so pick easy numbers. Rule number 2 is to pick different numbers for different variables. If they give you X and Y, don't pick 2 for X and 2 for Y. X is going to be 2 and Y could be 3. Okay, so pick different numbers for different variables. And rule number 3, avoid 0, 1, and the numbers that show up in the problem or the answer choices. Now here, we're going to pick, we're not going to pick 0 because 0 times any number is actually 0. Okay, and 1 times any number is actually that number. So 1 times 6 is 6, and 3 times 1 is 3, okay? All right, and the numbers in the questions are answer choices. So according to this question here, and you have this in your booklet, if we were to pick numbers to replace J with, we would avoid the numbers 2 and 4 because they both show up in our answer choices, okay? You just want to avoid those at all costs. So let's do it now. We're going to plug in numbers. We are going to pick 4 for J, and if that is the case, if Janet is 4 years old, in our problem it says Michael is twice her age, so that means that Michael is going to be 8. In the problem, it also says that Michael is half as old as Tito. So if Michael is half as old as Tito, then Michael is 8 and Tito is actually 16 because half of his age will be 8. So if you ever get that confused, just go with Tito's age and make sure Michael is half that age, or just double Michael's age to get Tito's, okay? The opposite of half is to times it by 2. That's a good trick to remember. Okay, so we're going to see if we plug in our J, which is 4, which one of these answer choices would be Tito's age, which is 16. Now, some of you are just math whiz, and I know you're going to get it just by looking. But because we don't know who we have viewing us today and in our virtual classroom, we're actually going to do it step by step. All right, so J divided by 4, that's 4, which is our J, divided by 4. 4 divided by 4 is actually 1. So, boop, that is not it, okay? B says J divided by 2. That would be 4 divided by 2, which equals 2, and that is not our answer of 16. C is 2 times J. So we're going to multiply 2 times 4 and get 8, and that's not it. But even though we know that it's not A, B, and C, we automatically know that it's D. We're going to do it anyway, All right, 4 times 4 is actually 16. And ding, 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 that's our answer, okay? Notice how we did not have to do any fancy math. We did not have to do any algebra. Nope, no algebra here. We didn't even have to come up with the fancy translated words to math question. We didn't have to do that. All you had to do was pick numbers. A lot of questions on the SAT are that simple. They look intimidating, but we don't let them scare us, okay? I hope you got that. All right, so this next strategy is called plugging in. Plugging in is something I so love. How many of you actually use your calculator to plug in the answer choices? Because you know, out of the answer choices, there's going to be one, right? That is going to be right. Okay, so here we have an example. Barbara and Sharon share an apartment that has a monthly rent of $1,200. If Barbara pays $150 more than twice the amount that Sharon pays, how much does Barbara pay? First of all, I don't know who these roommates are, but if I was Barbara, I'm not paying twice as much as my roommate pays plus 150. Sharon must actually be an airline, either an airline pilot or something. Like, she's never home. Like, she lives somewhere else, and all she's paying for is the PO box or our mailing address, because I'm not paying that much. All right, so our choices are, our choices are 900, 850, 700, and 650. Okay, so you have this example in your booklets as well. And so I want you to just follow along with me. When you're picking or plugging in answer choices, always pick B or C, because B or C will be the ones in the middle. And if by chance B is too big, you can eliminate A and B, and you will be left with C and D, and you'll actually have a 50-50 chance of getting your answer right. The same thing applies if one of your answer choices, like let's say C was too small, you would know automatically to go up to the next one. But we're going to put this into practice. What I did here was I actually translated our word problem into math. I used B for Barbara and S for Sharon, and I put them in a math problem. So B plus S equals 1,200. That's Barbara and Sharon share an apartment with a monthly rent of 1,200. Bam, we actually have our problem. Okay, then we're going to actually use another problem to write the second part. If Barbara pays 150 more than twice the amount that Sharon pays, how much does she pay? So B is going to be Barbara. Equals means that's what her amount will equal. 150 plus, because that's 150 more. Okay, so the word more then is actually plus in this problem. 2S is twice the amount that Sharon pays. So we're just going to plug this in. So let's say we pick B or C. I'm going to go with C just to give her the benefit of the doubt. So I'm going to give C. All right. So all of these answer choices, notice one thing about them. They are in descending order. You may not know this, but all of the questions on the SAT in the math section are in either ascending, meaning they go up, or descending, meaning they go down. They're in order, okay? No random order. They're actually in order. And when they look like this is an awesome advantage for you, okay? So we're going to plug in our C choice, which is 700. We're going to plug that in or substitute it for Barbara's name, okay? So Barbara equals 150 plus 2 times Sharon. So now we have 700 equals 150 plus 2S. we're going to just solve for S because that's what we want to do in order to put it into our original problem over here, which is B plus S equals 1200. So now we're going to subtract 150 from both sides, and we're going to get 550. And that's going to equal our 2S. Then we have to divide by 2 on both sides in order to get S by itself. And right now, Sharon's amount is 275. Now on your sheets, I want you to actually plug this in. If you were to go back here and you plug in B plus S, right? Our B is 700, our S is 275. What will our answer be? Now we'll give you time to put that in the chat. Remember, we have B is 700 and S is 75. Okay, let's see what we get. All right, for those of you who added, you're really great at math. You can do mental math. 700 plus 275 is going to be 975, which means that it's not 1200. It's actually smaller than 1200, which means that we can eliminate C and D because C is too small. We know this now. And if C is too small, D is automatically too small, okay? And so you have a 50-50 chance of getting your question right. So now if you plug in 850, and if you will know if it's 850, you'll get it right. If it's not 850, it has to be 900 because you have eliminated all your other choices. So that's how plugging in works, okay? So I just wanted you all to have 3 strategies that you can use for the questions that you will be given, or actually that you have in your booklet, okay? So at this time, we're going to give you 10 minutes to actually do questions in your booklet. On page 40 through 42, you will see that you'll have questions with calculators, okay? And you all may not have your calculators with you, but if you need to, we're going to give you 10 minutes so that you can do these questions. You're going to use your calculator for the first 7, and for the last 5, you will not use your calculator. You'll see that you have a calculator with the X scratched through. That means that you are not able to use your calculator. So no cheating, okay? All right, so we will have a 10-minute timer put up for you on this screen so that you can have that. And you will be able to do this in 10 minutes, okay? And we're going to reveal the answers after your time. Just remember that when you have your answers, you can put them in the chat. Remember, we are giving prizes for those who get answers correct first, okay? So don't be like the rabbit and do them really quick and make mistakes. See if you can get as many correct as you can. And remember to put your number, question number, next to your actual answer. So you should see like 2, number 2D, or number 3C, something like that. Make sure that you put the answer next to it. All right, now normally we would do this in a big auditorium, and I would come down from the stage and come through all of the little rows and up the aisle just to check to see if you are in good shape. Make sure you have a pencil, but you are home. So I am not able to go into your room and see what you're doing. So I would like for you to take advantage of the chat that we have. Make sure that if you have any questions, we have Butterfly Work staff ready and accessible to actually answer those questions for you. And we can also record who's doing their questions correctly. So if you put in your answers, make sure that you put them in to the chat, okay? And any questions that you have, you put those in the chat as well. That way that we can get right to you. Remember, these questions are on pages 40, 41, and 42 in your work booklet. So just a reminder in case folks, came back from the bathroom and needed to know where we were. That's where we are. See you all working diligently. Yay! We love to see that. All right, you all. You have 5 minutes remaining. Very similar to that proctor I told you about that's giving your exam. You have 5 minutes remaining. So what are you gonna do with those 5 minutes? Oh, I see you all have some good answers coming in. Just remember that when you have your answers, you can put them in the chat. Remember, we are giving prizes for those who get answers correct first, okay? Okay, you all. So we're coming up on 3 minutes now, and I'm just going to put into the chat our 3 strategies that you can come up with. Well, actually, that you can use for this. You have, remember, strategy 1 was now, later, never. Remember that letter of the day, okay? Strategy 2 was to pick numbers if you are replacing them with variables in your answer choices. And strategy 3 is to plug in. Remember to plug in answer choices, but you are actually going to plug in B or C, okay? Choose those 2 first, the 2 middle ones. They give you an advantage, okay, for your process of elimination later. And remember, our staff is here to answer any questions that you may have in the chat. And this is just an addendum that I noticed because these 2 pages actually have numbers 1 through 7. So 1 through 7, you're going to actually just put as numbers 1 through 7. But when you get to the non-calc, you're going to actually number them this way. So you are going to use NC1. And the answer will be B, like that, okay? Or you actually, yeah, that would be good. That way you actually will know which ones you're on, because some people are skipping around, so they may not answer them in order. So make sure that you put NC for non-calc so that we know, okay? 1 minute left, 1 minute remaining. All right, party people, let's see what these answers are, okay? So we're going to review the answers, not in too much detail, but I will give a few insights for those that are quick and easy to do. All right, so our first question on page 40 was about the baseball player. They got $235.60 each time he got a home run and $98.70 for each time he hit a double, correct? So all you have to do for this one was put the number with the letter, bam, okay? So the one that they asked for, they always underline like key phrases, like 235, and that we know that that's for the hits. We have 98.70, and we know that that's for the double. So we're gonna actually put those 2 things together. So the answer choice that did that in the best sequence was actually A. 235.60 times H, because that's how many hits he got, plus 98.70 times D, which is actually how many doubles, okay? So the answer to number 1 is A. All right. We're going to scroll down to, let's see. We're going to scroll down to our number 2 question. All right. Here they said S is equal to 16.13 times 229 times T. Now for this one, it may have been a little tricky, but one thing that you can do, you can either do it one of 2 ways. You can plug in, you could have done that. You could have come up with a number for S and a number for T and see which ones worked out. Or you can actually just solve this one for T, because all of your answers are actually solved to T. And the key thing for this one is to remember that if you're ever trying to get the other, like you're solving for another letter, always do the opposite operation. So the opposite operation of adding 16, 13 to our problem is subtracting. So we are actually going to eliminate anything that has a plus sign. So we're going to get rid of A, and we're going to get rid of C, because those actually have S added to 16, which is what we already have. So we don't need that. And then the opposite of multiplication is division. So we know that we're going to divide our T by 2.29. And the one that did that most efficiently is actually B. So that's our answer for number 2. Always start with your problem and do the opposite if you need to. Always do the opposite operation. Okay. Number 3. Let's scroll up to number 3. Number 3 was really funny. I hope you all got this. Some of you all, I know that you put B, because you got an answer that actually said B. But B would have been the answer had that inequality been equal sign. That actually is a less than symbol. And the answer to number 3 is A. Don't trip out about it though, okay? So I wanted you to see, you can actually use the plug-in technique for this. You could have plugged in B or C and see which one was actually going to fit and see which ones did not fit. And when you're using negative numbers, I'm always a fan of actually just solving. So if you would have solved this, it would have been X is actually less than -2. Now, had it said X is equal to -2, you would have actually gotten B, but it's less than -2. The only answer choice that is less than -2 is -3. Yep, they tried to trick you on that one, but don't be too salty. Don't be too mad. The good thing is that you actually did it, okay? So we're gonna do number 4. Number 4 is by all means my favorite of these, because number 4 would be a problem that some people would actually, skip, I think. But I want to show you a trick. When you are on a problem like this, all I want you to do is read and underline what they say. Lucia bought a stereo system at a store that gave her a 30% discount. Underline the discount, okay? And the total that she paid was D dollars, which included a 6% sales tax. So underline your sales tax, okay? Now the question is asking us, which of the following represents the original price? So the original price is going to be more than the discounted price, correct? Now, 2 things you could do. You can make D 100 and plug it in. You could actually do that, okay? Or you can simply look at the problem, okay? Now, if you're going to discount something, doesn't that mean subtraction? I think so. So if you're looking at this very carefully, which one of these answers is the only one that gives a discount, ding, 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 subtraction of 30%, and which one actually adds 6%? The only one that does that, boop, is B. B gives you a discount. You all see 1 minus 0.30, that's a discount. And 1 plus 0.06, that's tax. Anytime you see sales tax, they're adding something, okay? So make sure that you look at the problems. You didn't even have to do this one. So if this was one that you skip, make sure that you not skip these types of problems in the future, okay? All right, we're gonna go to our next problem, number 5. Number 5, and we're still in the calculator section, okay? So the answer to number 5 here, they actually had, for this question, it was 2 parts. You get 2 25, let me see, for each car that goes through. So you have to remember that you actually have 225 for this, okay, for each car, and there are 19 cars. So when you do this one, I'll just give you the answers, okay, so that you get them. Let's see, okay. So for this particular one, if you had 19 cars, you times that by 225, and then you subtracted that from the money they started out with, you would have ended up with $85.50. So I'm going to actually outline that so you can see, okay? So the answer to number 5 is C. The answer to number 6, okay, which is very similar to one of the ones that we did before, you actually had to solve for L. Notice that all of them are L, okay? And the answer to this one would have been the opposite. You multiply each side by T, and you divide each side by your 6S. And the opposite of cubing is to cube root. And so the only one that did that right was B, okay? All right, so our other answers, let's see. Oh, I think that was, oh, I didn't go down to number 6, I'm sorry. For number 6, okay. Okay, so we have less than 3 minutes left, so I'm just going to actually show you the answers all in one frame so that you can see them, just to make it nice and easy for you, okay? So here they are. All right, and so the answer to number 1 is A, 2 is B, 3 is A, 4 is B, 5 is C, 6 is D, 7 is B, and then on page 42, these were the ones that you could not use your calculator for. Number 1 was A, 2 is B, 3 is B, 4 is C, and 5 is B, okay? So now you're in good shape, and you now know all of the answers. And congratulations to those who actually put their answers in correctly. All right, so thank you all for participating in that. You got your first taste of actually using the strategies that we have. The first one was a now, later, never. So we want to make sure that you remember that. Use this as a game, and you actually should treat it like a game. Although, you know, it helps get rid of the anxiety that you may have. Some people don't do well with time. And so when they get into a time pressure environment, they get scared, and sometimes they forget. If you treat it like a game, it's all fun and games. So you actually can actually do the work and actually do it smoother. All right, and so now, later, never. Now questions are the easy ones. Later questions, we come back to, we use a strategy for those. And then never questions, we use our letter of the day. Then you want to use your picking numbers. Picking numbers, remember you're going to pick small numbers. Avoid 0, 1, and any numbers that actually show up in your problem. And when you're doing plugging in, you're going to choose B or C. Always choose those two first. Plug them into your calculator, see if they work. If one is too small, you eliminate that one and anything smaller than that, okay, to give yourself a 50-50 chance of getting your questions right. So I just thank you so much for participating. I look forward to seeing you all next for our next part, which will be writing, and we're going to get those grammar, punctuation, and style and organization skills together. So take your 5 minutes to do what you need to do. Get up, stretch, make sure that you're moving around, and get a sunshine break. You need to step outside. That's always great too. So thank you for participating. We'll see you back in 5.